Non Serviam by Sfarda el Ghul. Act 1. And shadow, being beneath, came into the veil, like a flame burning away the darkness. Life is flesh on bone convulsing above the ground. Begotten. Director E. Elias Merhige. Scene 1. Sophia. Georgiana. You were hardly 20 the first time you met death. It wore the skin of 3 faceless men springing from winter's shadow. The city hadn't breathed through the night, and neither did you. Your screams ripped the stars off the solstice sky and snuffed all light from the world. Her eyes anchored to your memory. Eyes of the woman you loved, like a sister you never had. Eyes blue as forget-me-nots. How true the name they were. Her skull bled across the frost-mantled flagstone like a cracked pomegranate, yet she shrieked at you with all that she had left within her. Run. You did, and you never stopped. Faustina Venzenza, 1762, 18th century. 9th cent millennium ZE, Zephyrus epoch. Midsummer. Violinist? Demanded Madame Irene Falco, inspecting my callous-tipped fingers with precision befitting a predator scouting a spore. Cellist, I croak out. Aubergine silk and powdery sweet perfume wrapped the pewter-haired woman's petite frame, hard as a nail, crow-dark eyes glinting within the pallid wrinkles of her gaunt face. Name? Georgiana Damiani. Cicatricos knuckles, Falco spat. The Arum sells no damaged goods. I serve men of status. My stomach dropped. I needed to remain in the city-state above all. Thus, I needed to work far from the eyes of the powers that be. The alternatives were starving on the streets or rotting in the dungeons, and those could be considered lucky, my predicament considered. Nonetheless, Madame's eyes slitted, your assets aren't few. Her slight fingers spindled through the waist-length mane of my caramel coils, scrutiny snapping to my face like a hyena's ravening jaw. Broad, heart-shaped cheekbones, pointed chin, vulpine quality, and your lips, indented on the bottom as deeply as the bow. All Papa's features. My heart wrenched hard as a rusted iron. A mole beneath your left eye and a daintier at the center of that cheek. Amber eyes vivid enough to pass for red at a glimpse. Mother's eyes. Falco's thin lips curled as she returned to my cold hands. Shame for the scars. Her eyes coruscated with a thirst. I'd soon learn that it was a thirst for pain. Engendered by what? My throat thickened. Injustice. A scoff. What would you know about injustice? A rare lunera marked the year's shortest day, when wintry night swiftly cast its Nivean batiste of fog upon Vicenza, the southernmost of Faustina's quadruplet city-states. You strolled arm in arm with your beloved friend down the snow-swaddled marble promenade that undying moon, carrying tiny baskets of winter apples to neighbors and exchanging them with words of goodwill. Ligneza ignis morarium, ipse focire e vostrum, era ipse e vostrum. Woodless, a fire dies. Our hearth is yours, as ours is yours. You were hardly 20, but your eyes caught the fear paling the neighbor's cheeks when your beloved friend smiled in that rudibond way of hers. You knew, too, why that door shut so loud against the silence, the slumbering city, the blank mask, an apotropic pagan talisman, hooked to its frontal facade rattling like shaken nerves. Your eye caught the fear because you knew it like your own, because you weren't to feel. The law decreed that you aren't. You'd never laugh with anyone but your beloved friend and your father. Your mother would see your fingers bruised and bleeding for such transgression. The governor would see you headless. In the disillusioned procession, the pair of you descended to the courtyard, Sa Piazza dell'Aviani, the square of floods. Its marble floors never went without a sheet of shoe-deep water in the summer, and in the winter It became a skating rink. But no longer, not since the regime change. You knelt beside the smooth expanse of tenantless ice, hugged your knees, your curls cocooning you the way your mother, the blood of whom bestowed upon you such glorious hair, never would. Scythe strokes of wind swept the balconies of Vicenza's ebonine buildings, fused tight as sutures in ornate with ossiform stucco and curlicues. Above unfurled a lamp-back sky strewn with stars like diamonds fallen from the weary miner's wagon, and no one but you and your beloved friend stalked the streets beneath that clanquant corpse field. Not the votaries of the order in their blood-soaked regalia, not the dark-hearted soldiers of the city guard. You heard your friend gasp. From the nook in a Solomonic column etched with eyes and faces, she lifted a baby bird, pale as cottony down, cradling it in her long palms. The fragile creature lay stiff with death. The poor thing deserved a proper burial. She swaddled the bird in a kerchief and slipped it inside of her snow-sweeping lazzoline duras. Like friend, that fascination with death, yours pressing roses to be preserved like taxidermy and encrusting teeth upon earrings that you'd never wear, for your mother never permitted your ears to be pierced, hers pinning cadavers of moths to frames festooned in Babylia needle lace and silver leaf, carving white clay statues, stabbed through the heart with glass swords. It made you outcast your knowledge hunger, your soul suffering. You observed her then, Emanuela Vehanush Eraldi, tall as the mountains of her maternal land and graceful as its brooks, sculptural as her creations. Coins wreathed her swan-like neck and wove through the hip-length darkness of her rippling hair, silver beads swinging around her chest and jaw. She'd said the embroidery on her flowering gown's lapels was called marash. Like her pendant, a glass pomegranate arrow, like a suspended blood drop, symbolized life and abundance in Lacarican culture. That's why you crafted that pendant for her, a reminder of her distaff homeland. Emma was your name for her, your dearest friend since age 6, your first friend, your only. Behind her Columbina, eyes blue as forget-me-nots, clouded with a melancholy the glimmer of her pearl smile, a ballerina's artifice, only authentic as diamante diadems, could never dispel in an ion. Vicenza's people had worn masks for over a millennium, a symbol of resistance against northern colonization, which had kept your land grasped and unbreathing within the Faustian Empire's brutal fist. 8 years prior, Governor Crescenzo Juan de Tullia swindled power over Vicenza, enforcing his tyrannical Sa Nova Justica, the new justice, to make a crime of laughter and a pariah of all emotions. You were only 12. And now, as the twilight of your civilization descended upon its own withering flesh, masks took on a perversion of their former liberatory motif, becoming de Tullia's armor against turpitude, against rebellion, against humanity. Now, to live was to wear a mask evermore. Silly Georgie, Emma nudged your side as you walked home arm in arm, rose and lips a-sparkle with her brightest jewels. When this ends, and it will, you'll come to Lerkir with me. The air is wonderful in the cloud-drinking mountains, and Nurin Lake near the capital is always blue as the flowers. She gestured to the satin and nacre forget-me-nots mincing her Columbina. In the summer, we host an ancient festival for our goddess of love and fecundity where we splash each other with water. All of Lijahak's street glisters. Emma mused with that hopeful fervor often, her adornments donning the iridescence of bona fide diamonds, as if you weren't trapped, as if the city gates weren't impenetrable, and labor camps didn't lie beyond the gangrene to the bodies of the Republic dubbed Faustina. But you'd chat about bygone pleasures for hours on end in your father's makeshift observatorium, you sitting with your cello and Emma repeating her enchapes, those rare tranquil vespers, smelling of lavender tisane and bergamot incense. A lifetime lost. Vicenza's flesh pulsed with vessels and canals, roads to be tread only on foot, no steeds or mountains permitted, certainly no Reli Pregicides or Ilanka Trokiki. Watery calginosity rippled in the alcoves of the city's ret, eyes opening up in the walls of the chapels you passed where unseen choirs cantilated in ghostly hymns, and the pair of you grew hushed. You fell silent when descrying a wanted poster rustle in the Gothic breeze. A single mask was rendered on it with the executioner's diligence for no other reason but a haunting reminder. An outlawed mask, a mouthless Bauta. Every Vinsanzani knew of the bounty on the Bauta's head, the hatred of him propagandized by the Ministry of Dominion. The Bauta put the Pyre's tragic plays in protest, terrorized the corrupt city guards, and decried the draconian laws that locked the city in chains. The governor called him sick, a sickness, a demon heresiarch of order's destruction, a rattler of chains in the darkness, a whisperer of treason. And was the governor's word not gospel? What you wouldn't do to pry open the gates into the governing kingdom, unspool the brains and the powers that be, and devour every arcane verse inscribed upon their Giri and Sulci, decipher every truth and fallacy, and withhold wisdom. But you couldn't. You weren't to know either. The law decreed that you oughtn't. It writhed inside you like a trapped animal, everything you swallowed desperately hankering, but your mother's voice hissed in the darkness of your mind. Nothing is worth it, so you would take it to your grave. What is enemy in Hogar? You asked Emma, wishing to dull your dread, for sometimes you felt like you could see yourself through those eyes swiveling in the ancient walls. Vasco! Fivan. Emma always spoke Hogar with such joy, such ache of separation. Rose? Fart. Rosa. Love? Emma smiled, true as quartz forged of the sun's essence, a hearth in the cold. Ser. And even with the volto obscuring her visage, Emma pulled you close and pressed her face to yours. Just beneath her right cheekbone, a large mole splotched her porcelain skin like ink. You didn't have the tiny dot in the center of your left cheek before you met Emma. Only the beauty spot beneath that eye to match your mother. You fancied to think the second came about from yours hugging Emma. It became your mythical ritual. Love in Faustian was Atene, eater. Nar. The symbolism appeared to your shadow in its cannibalistic subsumption. You floated through existence, split in its twain after all, a diptych. And you were hardly 20 the first time you met death. It wore the skin of 3 faceless men springing from winter's shadow. 2 restrained you. The third pinned Emma down, drove her skull into the frost-mantled flagstone until it bled like a cracked pomegranate. Your screams ripped the stars off the sky and snuffed all light from the world. But you were too weak. Each time you lunged to save your beloved friend, the men broke your fingers. Their snap, a nightmarish mnemonic you'd forever hear in the spit of a wood fire and the phantasmical finger drum of rain. And nobody came to help you that soulless night. Emma's eyes anchored to your memory. Eyes of the woman you loved like a sister you never had. Eyes blue as forget-me-nots. How true to name they were. It must have been a surge of a cornered animal's rapid fear that broke you free, and it was then that Emanuela shrieked at you with all that she had left within her. Run! You did, and you never stopped, but you couldn't save her. When did this come to pass? Falco's question came bluntly, an interrogation. 2 years ago. I forced through the phantom bind constricting my throat. The murderers' names were never disclosed to me, and only one of the 3 was put to death. One too few. I sought answers. I sought justice. So, I would remain in this wretched city until I obtained the key to break into Detulia's kingdom and learn the truth of the night still haunting me. The night I was reaped of one of my most beloved. I clamped my hands shut against the tremble and recollected myself presently. Madame Irene Falco still studied me, toying with a gray-streaked lock fallen loosely from her wealthy chignon, pearls like triplet rows of molars chattering around her bird-boned throat. Take off your clothes,